Uncertainty is definitely uncomfortable, but it's also an invitation to grow. It's an invitation to grow, honey. You ain't got to die. You ain't got to be stifled. You can grow. And I want you to expect to grow. So this week, here's your challenge. I want you to think about one strategy that I've discussed with you in this episode, even if you have to go back and rewatch it and listen to it a couple of times. And I want you to practice mindfulness, like being in the moment, being present, reconnecting with your own values and what matters to you, and then taking small intentional steps towards what you want to grow in or how you want it to be. And remember, you don't have to have all the answers to keep moving forward. That's the control in us, where we want to have all the answers. Right now, let that go. Let it go. Welcome. Hello, I am Sybil Bull, your host for Faith-Based Optimum Living. We're going to dive into transformative content where we talk about emotional wellness, purpose-driven living, and meaningful life. Let's get into our episode. You don't want to miss what we're about to talk about because most of you have lived through some uncertainties in life. All right. So if we even backtrack, we can talk about 2020, where we were just going about our lives. We had our plans. We had so many things, and boom, pandemic, boom, shutdown, boom, change of life, boom, so many things out of our control. Right. And if you think about it, it was a time of so much uncertainty, right? And some of us are still recovering. Some people are still coming out of different areas of uncertainty. And even now in society and what's going on in the world, there are some new uncertainties that really brings about a lot of emotions, can really charge us into a place of depression or feeling upset. I know when I think about uncertainty, I think about things that are out of my control, right? I think about someone has maybe power to make a decision and I can't do anything about it. I think about how many people's lives have been impacted and changed by one person's decision, right? And so uncertainty could be in a small space where you were trying to go to school and maybe you didn't get the grant, the loan, or something happened. Uncertainty of so many different things that take place in life. And I know that it could become very uncomfortable and it could feel what some of us would say scary, tough, difficult, overwhelming. But I want to encourage you in this time together, as we're talking about optimum living and what it looks like to cultivate in this space. I want to encourage you that we're all in that, in that same ground. We've all had different times of where we've had uncertainty, whether it has been on a national scale, a global scale, or it's been in a more personal space. We've all encountered that. And I just want to help you to find some practical ways to stay grounded, right? So we're going to talk about thriving in uncertainty and finding some grounded and purposeful things to do in the chaos. It's not that we can control chaos at all times, but what we can do is find ways and tools and emotional wellness places that we can dive into to be able to say, okay, I'm not about to lose my mind here. I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm not going to hurt myself, or I'm not going to allow the darkness to take me over. When we're thinking about it, a lot of life doesn't always go as planned. I know that there is this really strong message about if you just make a vision board and if you just speak it into the atmosphere, if you send out good, good comes back. But let's just pause for a moment. Many of us have encountered a lot of good, right? But we've also encountered a lot of bad, even in the midst of saying all of those things. Some of us have, in our place of faith, we've prayed and believed God, and some things never changed, right? Some things died, some people passed away, and some things ended, right? The uncertainty of what I planned not coming to pass. great disappointments, chaotic things happening, right? Things that just make you feel stuck and overwhelmed. Things that make you feel like, is it ever going to change? And I've had those feelings. I've had those experiences. And I can definitely tell you that I've found some things that has helped me to stay grounded in the midst of the chaos, to allow myself not to get overwhelmed, I say, with the tsunami of the crazy, right? And that happens. And so when there are things that derail us and causes things out of our control, what do? How does it look? Today, I want to give you an opportunity to realign yourself with purpose, because purpose is not gone because there is uncertainty. Your purpose is not changed because there is uncertainty. Your purpose is still the same. And I just want to encourage you to build that inner strength. And so then this episode, we're just going to talk about staying grounded day by day, for some of us hour by hour, right? And find clarity where you're not allowing everything that's unpredictable to speak to you and then you lose hope, to guide you into making decisions or not making decisions, becoming indecisive based upon the fact that it's so uncertain. I just want to encourage you, let's grow here. Let's get into an area where we remind ourselves that all is not lost. There's some good things that could still happen even in the midst of uncertainty. But I want to talk about what happens and what is the impact so that you're able to identify that, for us who are followers of Jesus Christ, we may say this is warfare because uncertainty is happening and there's an impact happening on my life. So you may go into, warfare and doing the most, or you may start speaking and declaring the most things. But I want to talk about what happens to your brain, right? Because your brain, my brain, our brain, it craves predictability. We hate uncertainty, right? We hate uncertainty. I'll use that H word because we do. We like things to be predictable. We like to know the outcome. We want to know, if I do this, will this result here? We want to know that if I marry this person, if I start this job, if I quit this job, if I do this, if I do that, we want to know that the result is going to be the results, and we want certainty. And when it triggers our brain that this uncertainty has happened, it can lead to stress. All right. I've had that. It can lead to indecision. I said that earlier. And then you just be feeling stuck like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Da, 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 da. You just be cycling things. You get up and you're like, it feels like it's a waste of time. Oh my God, I've tried it. People are like, you could still do it. And oh, I don't want to do it. You just go through all of this because of the uncertainty. So your brain is like, I need predictability. I need to know that this will really happen if I do this. And I cannot tell you that. But what I can tell you that is, instead of looking at it as a threat, uncertainty as a threat, or something that's coming to take away your life, or that you can't get past this, I want you to give you a chance to kind of start exploring new opportunities. I want you to reframe it and look at new definitions and prioritizing things. This is how we're going to stay grounded. And this is how a lot of us have had to stay grounded. When you look at the difference between people who start thriving and flourishing and not just surviving, because let's be real, all of us was in a pandemic, right? It wasn't just a few people. So what is the difference between those people who start thriving and flourishing, is that they discovered ways to stay grounded in the chaos. They've used tools to help them reframe life. And some people actually had booming businesses, and some people had gotten married even in the pandemic. There were opportunities in life and things that were still happening. It just looked really different. And so we want to reflect on, when was a time in your life where things were so uncertain and it led you to unexpected growth, right? We want to talk about how you didn't even expect to grow, but you did. This uncertainty that, felt like so much pain. It just brought maybe trauma, but somewhere in there, years later, you can look back and see, wow, I grew. I can't believe it. I'm not the same person. So uncertainty can actually present an opportunity for growth. And I know for sure that in this decade alone, I've grown so much as a person based on the fact that I've taken a lot of uncertainties and said, I am not going to stay here. I'm not going to be here. Just woe is me. How can I reframe it? What are areas that I could do? I have to sit back and think about life is still there. And how can I allow my faith, right, in action to come forward? What is the catalyst that I can use to grow here? And when I'm growing, that means everything around me starts to grow. Everything around me starts to flourish. And so there's this thing again that happens to our brain, right? And our brain starts thinking, how can I predict things? But I don't want you to get caught into predicting it. What I want you to get into a space is if you realize that you've become overwhelmed with the place of, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. Ooh, I didn't see that coming. I wish I knew. I wish God would have revealed it. If you're in that place, I want you to kind of say to yourself, I'm not in a physical threat, right? I'm not in a threat. Okay, I do have some stress, but I'm going to learn how to release this, right? I do have a roof over my head. There's some things that I just say to myself. I have a roof over my head. For me personally, I have the activities of my limbs. I have a mind that's able to make decisions and compute and it cognitive, right? And so what can I do? What do I have? And just being able to look at if there is a threat, can I grow from this? What can I do? How can I bring some stability to my inner man? Because I can't change the external all the time, but I cannot allow the external to keep changing me, right? And so if I'm triggered, right, and my brain function is fight, flight, or freeze. Now you're fighting, you flight, you freeze, and you're going back and forth. You have to get to a place where you're able to be grounded. And just in case you don't know what that looks like, when you're in a fight, flight, or freeze moment, it's like your brain's alarm goes into active mode and it says fight, flight, or freeze response over and over, right? Because there's a uncertainty arising. People have left the country. They're like, listen, we out. We're starting a new life. We're doing this. We're doing that. We're doing this. People have left marriages because there's uncertainty. They've ended relationships and all of this stuff because there's uncertainty. So sometimes we're making it not out of faith, but we're making those decisions out of fight. Fight is trying to control everything or resisting the change aggressively, right? Fight is what? Trying to control everything or resisting the change aggressively. I personally had to go through a series of grounding myself to say that I release the things that I cannot change because my peace and the stress and the pressure, I just can't have this anxiety over my life. I can't change that. I had to say that. So because I don't want my response to be that I'm aggressively, I'm resisting it or that I'm trying to think that I can control it. Flight is just avoiding decisions or ignoring the problems. That's the toxic way that some people are positive. It's just, everything is good. I speak life. Listen, don't ignore the problem, all right? Don't avoid making a decision. You have to make decisions. And flight is, I'm in avoidance. I'm ignoring it. It's not that bad. And also, you're hoping that it resolves itself independently of you participating. That's what it means when you're in flight. Your brain is like, we zoned out, we out. I'm not dealing with it. I don't have time for it. I'm just in the peace zone. Everything is peace. You should be in peace. Don't get me wrong. But you have to also, in your peace, take care of situations. You have to be present in the situations, right? And then there's this freeze moment. I can tell you I've been there. I didn't even know this what it was when I was younger, but I've learned it's in the freeze moment. The freeze is, I feel so overwhelmed. I'm unable to move. I feel stuck. And you just sit and you just think about the situation and you just keep telling yourself, every time I think about doing something, I just feel so tired. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm unable to move, unable to make a decision. I'm able to go forward. I really can't. 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. People are moving past you and you're wondering, what are they doing? What am I not doing? It's because you're in freeze. You've decided I'm overwhelmed and I don't have what it takes to move forward. And I told you in that video about resilience, you got to go back and watch it, that's necessary when you are creating an optimum life. So if you imagine that you keep receiving unexpected emails, messages about changes at work. So instead of calmly assessing the situation, your brain starts to trigger panic thoughts like, what if I lose my job? How will I handle this? Like everyone is like depending on me. What if this disrupts everything? Like, what am I going to do? Like when you hear bad news or things like this that are out of your control, like your brain can start triggering you into panic thoughts. Panic, panic, panic. You got money in the bank, your bills are paid, and you're in panic mode. And you have to look back and say to yourself, what is happening to me? Because that's how it works when you're getting unexpected news. The fear is illogical, right? It's like a fear response that can become illogical. Fear can sometimes tell us what we need to do and how we need to do it. Don't get me wrong. Fear, tells us that there's some danger and some things like that, but it can make it harder for us to make clear, growth-oriented decisions. When we're just operating from fear, not faith, when we're not having vision, we're not having hope, when we're not believing, then we're plowing through in a harder way through the logic of fear. And so we don't want to be there where there's limited problem solving and we're increasing self-negative talk. Even the people that are speaking only positive. No one in my space, that brings me reality. If you get a report from the doctor that you don't like, I'm not saying run through town saying what the doctor says, but accept it and then find out what you can do to turn it around. Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. When uncertainty's help is hitting us and we're feeling overwhelmed, I don't know if you take a moment to breathe. Because, the oxygen, I know for several moments in life, I realized that I had held my breath for so long because there was uncertainty and I wanted to know, was it going to change, when it was going to change? And it feels like you are just taking like little breath and you're not necessarily breathing. You're not necessarily living. You're just existing in that space out of fear in the fight, flight, or freeze moment. And we want to reframe it. We want to get to a place where we start allowing the oxygen back into our bodies, where we are able to make sound decisions, reminding ourselves that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, right? But of love, power, and a sound mind. Grounding myself back into a place that I serve a God who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that I could ask or think, according to the power that's at work in me. Reminding myself that I don't have to have all the answer, but I know the one that has the answer. You have to ground yourself and begin to find small spaces where there is what you may say a rainbow, right, in the midst of the storm. And not just allowing the fear to overtake you, right? Thinking about all this unexpected stuff. I remember some unexpected things that had happened in my life. And I was telling myself, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not a good time for it to happen. I don't know if you ever said that, but I've said it. Why now? Why now? Just inside, just screaming, why now? With the uncertainty. And after you cry day in and day out, after you hold your breath or you allow yourself to not shower or eat, or you're angry with everything, you have to come to a place where you're like, you know what? I don't have to die here in this uncertainty. I don't have to allow fear to overwhelm me. I can rewire my brain to believe that something good could happen, but that's up to you, right? That's your decision. You have to remember that you're a fighter, right? That you're more than a conqueror, that you have the ability to overcome this certainty, but also you have the ability to stand strong in the uncertainty. You don't have to make this decision out of panic. Why are you doing that? Some people are, again, your reality is not matching your decisions that you're making, right? Because you're in panic zone. So sometimes when you're in panic zone, the reality is not true. And you have to go back and look at that, and you have to talk to yourself, and you even get people into your space, into your circle, who's going to help you with that. Somebody who's back in the day, I think, I watched a couple of movies when I was younger, and people are panicking and they'd slap you to bring you back. I'm not going to slap anyone. I'm not going to ask you to go slap anyone, but I feel like there's moments where we have to find ourselves grounded, and I can't control this and I can't change it. But what else can I do? I can breathe at this moment. I can grow. I can choose to grow. I can even find gratitude. There's absolutely one thing that I could say I'm thankful for. And it may not be a whole lot of things. I'm not going to pretend that you do, but it helps. The area of not allowing yourself to be paralyzed. I remember going through depression. I want to say maybe it was 3 years ago, and I was feeling depressed, and some days were like harder to get up than other days. I would just get up and I would be like, this is so heavy, right? Because I'm carrying everything. And I didn't remember that God also said that, he would carry some things. So it was so heavy. I wasn't built to carry that. You're not built to carry that. And so I had to walk through that depression and in that space of small darkness and laying around or just crying or eating chocolate. That was my comfort food, y'all. Chocolate. I started assessing who God is in the situation, not necessarily who I am. And in that moment, it started to spark this, reminder in my brain and my memory that God is good. This situation might not be good. This may not bring forth an answer that makes sense in this moment, but God is good. And those were like small steps to me wanting to grow, become grounded, remember to breathe, remember that it may not change overnight, but you can change and you can grow. And so I just want to encourage you that in what you're doing and telling yourself the story, make sure that you start breaking up with failure, right? Because uncertainty makes you feel like you could have controlled the results or the outcome of so many things. And if it was something that failed or somebody, I remember years ago, my husband had started a business and he had a partner, and the partner had taken everything. That's an uncertainty, right? We had children, small children. I probably was pregnant because I was pregnant every year for 9 years. And for those of you who don't know me, and in that moment, I was literally faced with uncertainty. I had at least 5 children. No, as a matter of fact, I had 6 children. And my husband said he was the only person working at that time, y'all. And he was like, guess what? We don't have a business anymore, which means that we didn't have income coming in. And he had to move back into the house. And in that moment, we had to cry and go through the process of that uncertainty. And what were we going to do? We only had really one option, and that was to lean on God. Truly one option, to lean on God. I know that my husband probably felt like it was a failure and things had failed. But what I loved about that moment in our lives was he reframed it. Excuse me. He found his courage to rebuild. And he said this one thing. Excuse me. He said this one thing that I'll never forget. And this is how it looks when you don't allow panic to overtake you when uncertainty happens. He said to me one day, he said, Sib, I said, what? He said, I was thanking God this morning because the one thing that he didn't take were the files with all of the client's information in there. And he said, that's a good thing because that means that I have everyone that we've ever done business with. And while I'm starting over, I don't have to start over by finding new clients. God had at least allowed him to leave the files. Like there was this big box of files that he had left in the floor. He had taken the furniture, he had taken all the money, he had taken everything, but God allowed the files to be there. And my husband, once he came out of his panic, he was able to say, oh, there's an opportunity for growth. There's an opportunity for a restart. There's an opportunity for this. And so that's how it looks when you start to get grounded. You start to tell yourself that the story has to change. I'm not going to, be in a space where I'm a failure. I'm not going to shame talk. And sometimes we have to say that new routines have to happen. We have to get to a place where we create new routines. That's how we stay grounded. It's trying to be like, oh, this is so hard. I remember why I could do this. When you talk about when you remember what you could do, listen, the pandemic shut everything down. So there's a lot of us still creating new routines after new routines after new routines, finding a rhythm and finding a harmony and rebuilding and resetting and figuring it out. And if in this year you're still figuring it out, be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, because uncertainty takes time when you're growing. And in this moment, if you are aware that there has been some uncertainty that's been uncomfortable, and you're just like, I have allowed it to influence me in ways, and this episode is like shine a light, like something is happening and being illuminated. I'm so happy to hear that. You know why? Because listen, you were not built to stay in the dark. You were built to shine, to be a light, right? And you have to come forth and do that. And in order for you to do that, you have to remember that uncertainty is a part of life. I don't want to say we all want uncertainty to happen, but it is a part of life. Things that are out of our control. I want to encourage you, as we're closing out on this episode, to find how you can have valuable lessons about resilience and adaptability. I learned that we all have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible. And watch this. We have to be willing to let go of a lot of things instead of trying to rebuild to get back something that won't even serve you in this moment. Listen, I don't want you to waste time I'm trying to get back to where I used to be. I just want some normalcy. Create a new normal. Find a new routine. Tell your story different. Decide that you're going to grow. Allow the challenges not to take you out, but allow them to reveal your capacity. How many of us learned how much capacity we had just because we became adaptable? We decided to be flexible. You decided to face the adversity, right? Instead of running from it and hiding from it, you didn't allow the fight, flight, or freeze of fear or panic to overtake you. Here's your question. You may not even know this, but how did you even grow or change during a shared time of uncertainty? Like, our family went through some uncertainty. Then there's a global uncertainty, the world, the US, the different things, right? What happened? What are some lessons or habits that have carried you to this moment, to carry you forward? What did you have to do? Uncertainty is definitely uncomfortable, but it's also an invitation to grow. It's an invitation to grow, honey. You ain't got to die. You ain't got to be stifled. You can grow. And I want you to expect to grow. So this week, here's your challenge. I want you to think about one strategy that I've discussed with you in this episode, even if you have to go back and rewatch it and listen to it a couple of times. And I want you to practice mindfulness, like being in the moment, being present, reconnecting with your own values and what matters to you, and then taking small intentional steps towards what you want to grow in or how you want it to be. And remember, you don't have to have all the answers to keep moving forward. That's the control in us, where we want to have all the answers. Right now, let that go. Let it go. Let it go. If this episode has inspired you, go ahead and just share it out. Leave me a comment. Tell me what's one thing that I shared. Or maybe you're on track and you just felt like this confirmed some stuff. Let us know. Leave a review if you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, other channels. If you're there, if you're on YouTube, come on, subscribe, you all, and let me know how this impacted you and what you're getting from it. Thank you for joining me today in Optimum Living. I'm Sybil Bull, and as always, remember to live with purpose, y'all. Take care of yourself and find meaning in the little things. Until next time, keep growing and enjoying the journey. I'll see you next episode.